everyone, Voodoo here, and in today's video, I'll be continuing my 5-tip series and giving you guys 5 more tips on how to get the most damage out of your Havoc Demon Hunter in Mythic Plus. Alright, so obviously, elephant in the room, Havoc is kind of down bad right now, especially in Mythic Plus with the Exodia comp and everything. But for those of you out there who are still grinding on Mythic Plus, big respect to you, and this should help you out pushing those ranks. Now today is going to be mostly focused around the Spread Eagle build. This is going to be our best build in Mythic Plus, but again, some of these could be taken and applied to other topics. Now if you watch a lot of the 5-tip series, some of these may be repeated a bit, but I'm going to do my best not to overlap. There might be a tiny bit of overlap, but most of these should be brand new tips. So, with that out of the way, make sure you like the video, make sure you hit the subscribe button if you're new here, go down and drop a comment as well, follow me on Twitch, join the Discord, consider becoming a channel member to help support me make videos. Now, let's get into it. So the first thing we're going to start off with, we're going to go nice and easy on the opener here, and just talk about the Spread Eagle Burst window. Now this is going to be where most of your damage comes in as this spec, really. And it's going to lead to you doing the most damage. So the reason Spread Eagle exists is a few reasons. It's mostly because of Glaive Tempest, the I-Beam stuff, Ragefire, Essence Break, and Restless Hunter. So because of the haste from Furious Gaze, you get a very large Restless Hunter buff on your death sweeps, you get 3 Inner Demons, you get Ragefire, you get Essence Break, you get Blind Fury, you get a ton of different stuff in this window to do a lot of damage. Now, it's going to be hard to see it on these target dummies, but we're going to go in and we're going to talk about it and try and do the best we can. So obviously, we're going to start off with Sigil Flame as you come in, we're going to throw a Glaive out, hit Immolation Aura, Fell Rush through, drop our Glaives down, then we're going to start with an I-Beam, Annihilation, turn, Essence Break, Death Sweep, Meta, Death Sweep, Annihilation, and we Fell Rush again, I-Beam, and then use the Hunt, Death Sweep, Annihilation. And from here, we're just going to push all the buttons as they light up and start tap targeting to move our Burning Wound onto other targets. You can see here, I burst for a ton of damage there. Well over, I think it was 500,000 on 5 targets, which is pretty solid. Now, obviously, that is nowhere near close to something like a Fire Mage or a Shadow Priest or anything, but that is going to be our best burst window as a Havoc Demon Hunter, and it's going to be the best way to do damage. So that's going to be how you want to do it. It's very important you don't munch any of your Inner Demon procs. It's very important you try and spam meta as fast as you can so that you get the Restless Hunter reset, basically. For those who are wondering, I would recommend using this macro right here, an @player macro, so that you can allow you to meta in place and not miss any moments of using that metamorphosis. It's important too to use your Hunt at the end of the window for when you have your initiative buff. That's going to do not initiative, your tier set buff. The tier set giving you 10% agility, which is a pretty sizable increase, and making sure that you're staying in range whenever your Ragefire blows up. So that's going to be basically your opener. It's going to be very important you nail that. Now, the other smaller opener that's important is going to be your Essence Break one. So again, we don't really want to throw the Glaive out unless we're just hitting the pack. You can throw it as you close in, but generally you want to just tab target throughout the thing to spread your Burning Moon around. So we'll rush through, we'll drop a Glaive Tempest, and then we're going to I-Beam, we're going to turn, we're going to backflip, Essence Break, Death Sweep, Annihilation, and then from there, that's the window. So it's very important that you do that every single time. Because we're not playing Shattered Destiny, you only get 1 Death Sweep, so the windows are pretty easy to do, but you got to make sure you're doing that, and you got to make sure you're not wasting any GCDs in that window. Alright, so next I want to talk about Trinkets. Now, for Trinkets for this build, you're going to want to have either Mirror Fracture Tomorrows or, oops, sorry, that's the wrong one, or Iridius Fragment. Those are going to be your best trinkets. You want to use these with your Metamorphosis. Now for the other slot, you generally want to have a passive. Ominous Chromatic Essence is generally going to be one of your better options, especially if you have multiple buffs with it. You can sim yourself to see which of those buffs is going to be best for you, but if you have a group with a few other OCEs, it's going to do very well. Dice is very good as well, and so is Call to Chaos. If you don't have those, Beacon to Beyond can work. However, as you'll see in a minute, there's going to be some weird things with Beacon where it ends up being pushed back by your 3-minute cooldown and also ends up not doing as well. So there's basically 2 different trinkets you can use, Mirror Fracture Tomorrows or Iridius Fragment. Mirror is going to be less burst damage, but because of the agility, it's going to be more damage outside of that big burst. Whereas Iridius Fragment is going to be even more burst damage because you get just a ton of agility with it. Also gives you some Mastery. Now Mastery, again, not the most amazing stat for us on equip, but you know, it's not the worst. probably want to gem more towards like verse and stuff like that. So we'll wait the 15 seconds here, and then we're into the rotation a bit. Now I'm also going to talk about one other thing in this section, and that's going to be Misery and Defeat. So with Sigil of Misery, basically what's going to happen is you're going to end up using this with your first I-Beam in your opener. The same is going to be true with your Radius Fragment and with your Elemental Potion of Ultimate Power. So you guys saw me just do the burst. Now I'm going to show you guys doing it with all these extra things. So we'll do the same thing. We'll throw our Glaive, we'll Sigil Flame, we'll rush in, we'll drop down our Glaive Tempest, Sigil of Misery, I'll use my Trinket, and then we'll I-Beam, Annihilation, Backflip, Essence Break, Death Sweep, Meta, Death Sweep, Annihilation, Annihilation, Hunt, I-Beam, Death Sweep, Annihilation, and Glaive Tempest. And you see that it actually bursts for a lot of damage. And at this point, you're going to have your Beacon come back up. And Beacon you want to sync with an initiative window. So we're going to backflip here, and while we're standing at it, we'll just Beacon. Going to hit, going to do a lot of damage, and then we'll just come back in and continue with the same rotation. So the reason why I don't recommend Beacon in general is because it gets pushed off by that usage there. So here, these both have essentially the same cooldown now, but we have to sync up our fragment with our meta, which means that we're going to end up pushing off Beacon more and more. And oftentimes you're going to end up having Beacon, if you're not doing like 25s or up, Beacon will just come up as the pack is dead. Generally, if you're bursting your meta on a pack, the pack's probably just going to die, and you only have that great usage of Beacon. On top of that, Beacon splits damage but doesn't increase past 5, which means that once you're starting to hit above 5 targets, you are actually losing damage on your Beacon. It's not really going to do much more. Yeah, it can crit and stuff, but it's not as good into large mass AoE as some other trinket options are or some passives are. So again, if you have the double on use, you definitely can use that, but it's definitely not recommended. Now, Sigil of Misery, I did miss the window a bit because I have the wrong trinket on my bar. I have Moros instead of Radius Fragment, but it's going to be very useful as well. You generally don't want to use this as a stop. Like, you can also use it for skips, which is pretty interesting. If you're Night Fae, you can pull a pack with this, Misery them, and then your group can run through, and then you can Night Fae it off, and they won't actually remain in combat, which is pretty cool. But generally, because of Misery and Defeat giving you 20% increased damage to them, you're generally going to want to use this on packs and just sync it up with your meta every 3 minutes. Again, you can use it to stop, but you have to kind of pre-cock it because it does it 2 seconds later. So just keep that in mind if you're trying to use that as a stop. Next, we're talking about Ragefire. Now, Ragefire is an important part of most of our AoE builds, unless you're playing like Glaive Tempest, Serrated Destiny, or Glaive Tempest, Shattered Destiny, my bad. But that's more like a single target focused thing on like BP or weird single target dungeons. But Ragefire is going to be very important, and it's based off your Immolation Aura critical strikes as, gathered in this Ragefire hit. Now, there's a few things weird about Ragefire. So you'd think Ragefire is uncapped because of how Immolation Aura is target capped. The hit of Ragefire is capped, but it's going to do less damage to more targets because, again, Immolation Aura is just going to do less damage to more targets. Now, the important things with Ragefire are twofold. So one thing to keep in mind when you're using Ragefire is that the initial hit of Immolation Aura actually does a lot of damage. When we go in and we pop Immolation Aura, it actually is going to hit for a pretty significant portion of damage and accumulate that into the Ragefire. Now, I am just sitting here. I'm going to put my Burning Wounds out. It's very important to tab target your Burning Wounds with this build instead of just throwing a Glaive like I just did. This way, you're actually going to spread them around. Again, not a lot you can do with it just not existing or whatever. You gotta just tab target it. We don't throw Glaives, but it's very important to proc Immolation Aura when you're in the pack so you get that initial burst. Again, Immolation Aura, we can see the initial burst does some damage, and then the dot does most of it, especially because of Growing Inferno, but still important to keep that in mind. The other important thing, and it's going to be hard to do this while you're flip-flapping and flying around, is to have momentum for the last 3 seconds of Immolation Aura, and also just be in the pack. So if I have Immolation Aura here, and I'm going to just Fel Rush and do my rotation and do my opener, as Immolation Aura starts to wind down, I want to make sure I'm in the pack as best as I can be. So here it's going to blow up, I'm right in the middle of the pack, I'm not doing anything else, and boom, it blows up and does its damage. If you're outside of the pack when that happens, if you're flipping, flying, and doing whatever, going around everywhere, then you're going to lose damage, obviously. So the most important thing here is to just be tab targeting as much as you physically can, be in the pack as much as you physically can, just so that you get that damage accumulation, and have momentum up for the last few seconds so that you can get that amp tick The last few seconds are the most important because Growing Inferno, obviously, its damage is going to increase each time it ticks, which means that the very few ticks are going to be the highest damaging ticks. So you can see here, Ragefire ends up doing a pretty sizable amount of damage, especially combined with Immolation Aura. You do roughly 2 million damage. That's what with like 2 casts, 3 casts, I guess. But they're going to do very well for you and do a lot of damage if you follow those tips. So the last tip is less of one singular tip. It's more of like 2 different things I want to talk about that I didn't really feel like giving our own section to. I want to talk about stats, and I want to talk about actually uncapped things you have. So like what lets you actually do damage in a big pack. So first, let's talk about stats. So for those of you who might know, it's definitely recommended to stack more versatility when you're playing with this Spread Eagle build. Now, I just don't have a ton of just how my gear works out. Basically, for Spread Eagle, you want some haste to allow you to hit Restless Hunter more consistently. Now, you have a ton from Furious Gaze, but more haste is good because it gives you more Immolation Aura, more Glaive Tempest, and just generally more damage overall. You don't want a ton of it, but you do want a little bit of it. Mastery is also pretty good because, again, Glaive Tempest is chaos damage, Eye Beam is chaos damage, First Blood is chaos damage, Inner Demon is chaos damage, but a lot of your damage to lots of targets isn't chaos, so Mastery definitely dips down a bit, but it's still a good stat. And Versatility is just generally what you want to go for because A, it just increases all your damage, and B, it decreases the damage you take, which is very important, especially as a Havoc Demon Hunter, where all we have is Blur. I don't know why I opened the talent tree for that. All we have is... Where's my Blur? Like here, right? All we have is Blur. It's not good, it's not great, doesn't do a ton, but we have Blur, we have passive magic damage reduction, and we have Leech, and that's all we got. So those are kind of like the stats you want to go for. Obviously, whatever. And I see this has wafting, it's just because I didn't re-enchant it from Raid, but go with Sophic Devotions, and yada yada yada. Now, in terms of what you actually have that's uncapped, it's important to keep in mind some things might seem uncapped, but actually are not. So the only true uncapped buttons we have are Fell Devastation from Collective Anguish, which does a pretty sizable amount of damage to lots of targets. Also, it just heals you, which is really good. And then we also have Inner Demon, which also does a lot of damage to multiple targets. So that's the only actual uncapped stuff we have. Some other things are technically uncapped. Trail of Ruin is uncapped in the sense that Blade Dance is capped, target capped to like 5 targets, I think. Yeah, 5 targets. But it can hit everything, and then Trail of Ruin will actually just tick on all of those. So Trail of Ruin is technically uncapped, even though Blade Dance isn't. And then Ragefire is weird. So Ragefire, the hit itself is not reduced by all the targets you hit. However, I mentioned this earlier, Immolation Aura is actually target capped at like 8 targets, I believe it is. It doesn't actually mention it in the tooltip for some reason. I actually should be doing that. Let me double check the tooltip. 8 yards. Yeah, it doesn't mention it in the tooltip, but Immolation Aura is actually soft capped at like 8 targets or so, which means that as you increase in your targets, your Immolation Aura will tick for less damage, which means you're actually going to get less damage into your Ragefire. Now, as you gain more targets, the Ragefire explosion will still deal more damage, but it's not going to be hitting as hard because you're going to have less damage going into it because of your Ragefire. Also, the more targets you have, the less likely you'll crit onto your Burning Wound enemies. So it's a really bit of a weird thing. It's important to keep in mind it's not actually uncapped fully because of how Immolation Aura works. There's also a sweet spot where if you have enough targets, like you'll get crit every time. There's lots of weird stuff going on there, but it is important to remember that. Now, Sigil of Flame is also uncapped. It actually can do a lot of damage if you just go up and pop it on like targets here. So I'll just pop it on these dummies and show you guys. So it will explode for a lot of damage. So the dot's gonna last for a good, reasonable period of time. Obviously, it'll do more if we have any means necessary targeted. We don't, but one dot, one thing hitting for roughly 24k, 25k DPS, that's pretty good. So in AoE, you definitely want to be using that more. Those are basically your uncapped things. Now, obviously, Eye Beam's going to do a lot of damage for you. Glaive Tempest is going to do a lot of damage for you, but they are capped at 5 targets, meaning after 5 targets, they'll start to do less. Obviously, they're going to do more because you're hitting another target, but the damage overall is going to be less compared to other abilities. So it's important to use your Inner Demons when you're fighting lots of targets, use your Ragefire when you can, use your Fell Dev, use your Sigil of Flame, stuff like that, just to get the most out of it and hit the most targets. Because again, being a Havoc Demon Hunter and M+ is going to handicap you a bit, so it's important to keep in mind all these things and just get the most out of all their damage when you can. So that is going to be it for my next video in the 5-tip series. Hopefully this helps you guys out in Mythic Plus. Now again, I know Havoc Demon Hunter is not that popular right now in Mythic Plus. There's, but if you're pushing, hopefully this video helps you do a little bit more damage, helps you just get that little bit extra oomph out of all your spells and abilities, and helps you just eke out a little bit more as you push up in the ranks. Obviously Havoc, not in a great spot right now. I'm holding on hope. I'm hoping for some change, hoping for some better things in the future. And obviously I will bring those news to you as soon as I can. That's just the best thing we're gonna have to do, and just hold on to it. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys liked the video. Drop a like, drop a comment, do all that fun stuff. And I'll see you guys on Friday with my next video. I'm streaming throughout the week as well. So go follow me on Twitch if you want to see some Havoc gameplay, some other spec gameplay, just WoW in general. And hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys next time. Peace. A big thank you to my channel members: 121, Payne, Andrew Kunel, Joshua O'Connell, Brad Wisniak, Zuligan, James, Oxclamation, It's Bulk, Flapjack67, Angelo, and Spaghetti. A big shout out to all you guys. Thank you guys so much for all the help. If you want to become a channel member and help support me, maybe make better and better videos, or just work on getting new stuff out, you also get exclusive perks, exclusive access to parts of my Discord, exclusive access to VOD review, some scripts, exclusive emotes, stuff like that. And consider following the link in the description, become a channel member, and help me out. Of course, you don't have to, but I really appreciate it. Anyways, thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.